Welcome to DA Sports. I'm your host, DASASIN. Thank you. This is episode number 57. Now, in today's episode, we have a couple of things to get into, all regarding the NBA playoffs. Man, it's been a great time for the NBA playoffs. I really hope that you've been watching. Now, in terms of the NBA playoffs, we are going to talk about a few things to recap that have gone on so far through the second round. And then we're going to cap the episode by getting into my top 5 rankings of all the NBA teams still left in the playoffs. Now, these rankings are going to be based off of not just what they're currently doing now, but how they've done in totality through the first round and this midway part through the second round. So, let's get into it. Okay, so to start with our NBA playoff highlights. Okay, this is where we're just going to kind of fire through some of the highlights of what's been going on in this round of the NBA playoffs. To start, I want to summarize and say, I know to a lot of people this is going to sound like hyperbole, but to me, this has been the most exciting playoffs from start to finish I've seen in my entire lifetime. Like, yes, we've seen series that may have been better or, maybe like a section here or there. But in terms of last second shots, buzzer beaters, upsets, comebacks, just great plays, I can't think of any time in my life where I've seen so many great, exhilarating games come down to the wire over and over and over again. Like, on both sides, like in both conferences, it's just been fantastic, and I can't wait to see this continue. With that being said, one of the biggest highlights has been through the second round that every single home team lost game 1 of their second round matchup. That's right. Boston lost game 1 at home. Cleveland lost game 1 at home. OKC lost game 1 at home. And Minnesota lost game 1 at home. It was the first time it had ever happened in NBA playoff history. And it's part of why I said this whole playoffs as a whole has been the most exciting playoffs I've ever seen, because who could have guessed that? Nobody. I mean, in hindsight, I wish I would have put a long shot parlay on all 4 of those teams to win game 1, because I would have came up. But I'm pretty sure you can't find a ticket of somebody doing that, because honestly, it sounds crazy. Like, could somebody have predicted that Golden State would beat Minnesota in game 1? Sure, that's reasonable. Could somebody have predicted that Denver would beat OKC in game 1? Yeah, that's reasonable. Could somebody have picked that Indiana would beat Cleveland in game 1? Sure, that's reasonable. Was somebody going to pick the Knicks to beat Boston in game 1? Probably not likely. And for all 4 of those things to happen, definitely not likely. So, yeah, it's definitely been exciting, and led by the fact that you just never know what's going to happen in each game. Now, going in further on that point, another huge highlight has been not only did every home team lose game 1, but the Knicks and the Pacers are both up 2-0 in their series, and even though they started on the road. So the Pacers went into Cleveland and won game 1 and game 2, both with them seeing Tyrese Halliburton close the show. I think it's crazy considering that just a couple of weeks ago, he got named number 1 on this poll of most overrated players that's supposed to be polled by NBA players as a whole. Now, granted, it wasn't every NBA player that voted. I think the league has like somewhere between like 450 to 500 players in the league. And I believe in this survey, only like 100 and something people participated. And out of the people that participated, I believe it was 12 people that voted for Halliburton as being the most overrated. So in the grand scheme of things, 12 people out of 450 is not really that much, but nonetheless, A lot of people don't look into the details. They just look at the headline. The headline says NBA players voted Tyrese Halliburton as the most overrated player in the league. And since that report came out, he did work in the first round to Milwaukee, hitting game winners, and then he goes into Cleveland, game 1 and game 2, including the free throw miss, grabbed his own rebound, dribbled out to the 3, step back, bottoms. Crazy. And then the more shocking one is the other side. I mean, same conference, but the other matchup in the same conference, the New York Knicks up 2-0 against Boston, with both games being in Boston, with both games Boston being up by 20 plus points in the game, and they lost both of those games. The Knicks won both of those games. It's crazy. Crazy. There's no way anybody could have predicted that. Both games, they started in a way that you thought it was going to be. Keep in mind, the Knicks didn't beat Boston in any of the games during the regular season. Boston won all 4 matchups during the regular season. So most people, including myself, predicted that Boston would win. Now, it's crazy because I kind of feel bad that I went away from my preseason pick because, as I mentioned in either the last episode or the week before the season started, I picked the Knicks. I picked the Knicks to go to the NBA championship game. And part of the reason that I changed right before the playoffs was because the way it was aligning, I'm like, well, the Knicks are going to end up playing Boston in the second round. And the Knicks haven't beaten Boston all year. So based on that, I was like, I guess I got to switch and go to what seems to be the more logical decision. But the way the Knicks have controlled game 1 and game 2, I'm like, maybe my preseason pick was more correct than I even could have imagined. So we'll see how it plays out. But definitely that has been shocking that the Knicks have gone up 2-0 in this second round against Boston. Now, the other highlight so far this round, I'd have to say, is the game 2 between OKC and Denver. Denver was able to claw back at the end of game 1, partially due to some bad coaching by OKC's coach to intentionally foul when they were up 3 on 2 different occasions, including one where they were up 3 with 10 seconds left and Joker wasn't even in the game. Why would you foul immediately? I don't know. But that's what they decided to do. They made the free throws. They're down 1. Chet gets the ball. He goes to the free throw line, misses both free throws, and then Denver comes down with the rebound. Russ pushes the ball, kicks to Aaron Gordon in the corner. He hits a game-winning 3, and they basically steal the game from game 1 from OKC. So OKC in game 2 comes out, and they put belt to ass, okay? They blew them out from the jump, and this is what people who really have faith in OKC winning it all this year know that they're capable of. OKC actually broke the record for most points in a first half by any team in playoff history with 87 points in the first half, which is crazy. I mean, if you told me in game 2 that Denver was going to score 55 in the first half, you'd be like, all right, it's probably a close game. They might even be winning at halftime. But no, instead, Denver scored 55 in the first half, and they were losing by 32 points. And then they would go on to lose the game by 43 points with all of the backups playing the fourth quarter. So OKC really showed what they're capable of, and it'll be interesting to see if that continues tonight as OKC and Denver play game 3 tonight. At the time of me recording this, it hasn't happened yet. At the time that this will air, it will. So we'll see how that plays out. But going into today's game, that game 2 performance, that 43-point blowout, was definitely impressive and definitely something that has to be highlighted. Okay, so now to finish this episode, we are going to get into my top 5 NBA rankings as of right now through the playoffs. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning of the episode, this top 5 ranking is based on how the teams have done so far through the playoffs, meaning game 1 of the first round is the beginning of the season, and wherever they are right now in their series is the end of the season as it pertains to this ranking. So it's not just what's been going on through round 2, it's from the beginning of the playoffs to right now, which today is Friday, May 9th. So, of course, there's 2 games tonight. This does not include those 2 games. This is recorded before either of those games started. So, at number 1, I have to go with the Oklahoma City Thunder. Yes, they are currently 1-1 right now in the second round, but if you recall, they did sweep the first round against Memphis. And their only loss in this playoff was that last second buzzer beater where they essentially gave the game away to Denver at home in game 1. So they've almost gone flawless, especially when you look at how they played in game 2 where they blew Denver out by 43 points. So I think overall from through the first round to now, OKC still has to be regarded as the number 1 ranked team in terms of how they've played through the playoffs so far, and they deserve to be there. Now, at number 2, I'm going with the Indiana Pacers. I know it sounds crazy to think that the Indiana Pacers are the second best team in the league, but solely based on how they've played so far in the playoffs, I definitely think that it's warranted. Indiana won their first round matchup against Milwaukee in 5 games, which to most people was surprising. Not necessarily that they won, but the fact that they got a gentleman's sweep and only lost 1 game in that entire series. Now, they go into the second round against Cleveland, who is the number 1 seed in the East, who had the second best record through the entire NBA regular season, and they win both games on the road, which has just been impressive. As I kind of touched on a little earlier, nobody expected that to happen. Tyrese Halliburton, after being called most overrated, has shown he's far from overrated, and he definitely is one of the best players in the league, and he's proving it in clutch time, game after game after game. So we got to give the nod to Indiana at number 2 as of right now. Now coming in at number 3, along the same lines as number 2, I got to go with the New York Knicks. Now, yes, the New York Knicks had a really tough series in round 1 against the Pistons, but they did win that series in 6 games. And then for them to turn that around by going into Boston, game 1 and game 2, and winning both of those games. Yes, they were down by 20 in both games, so that's not a good look, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you're down in the first quarter, the second quarter, or the third quarter. All that matters is what does the scoreboard say when the buzzer sounds at the end of the fourth. And in both games, they have ended up with the win. They're up 2-0 against the team that most people are predicting is going to win the championship. So they've got to get huge credit for that. I can't quite put them ahead of Indiana just because Indiana looked better in their first round matchup. And based on pure seeding, Indiana is actually beating a higher ranked team and has done it in a more dominant fashion than the Knicks have done against Boston. So the Knicks are at number 3 for right now. Now coming in at number 4, I'm going with the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, Minnesota in the first round had an impressive 5-game gentleman's sweep of the Lakers, which was an upset. The Lakers were favored. And there was like I mentioned in previous episodes, there was all this talk about Lakers in 5. And then Minnesota not only beat them, but they beat them in 5, which was, like poetic justice. And then they flipped that around, and they're now 1-1 in the second round. Now, some people would argue that, yeah, they won game 2 because Steph Curry is out. Maybe so, but we can't live in ifs and, what could have been. The fact of the matter is they're tied 1-1. Golden State does have home court advantage now that they stole one in Minnesota, but most people expect for Minnesota to continue doing what they've been doing, especially without Golden State having Steph Curry for at least a couple more games. If Minnesota can go into Golden State and win game 3 and 4, then yes, I think this is one of those that where even if Curry comes back, it probably ends in 5. I think in comparison to how Minnesota's played versus other teams, I do think this is still fitting. They deserve to be in the number 4 spot. And then bringing in that top 5 at number 5, I'm going with the Boston Celtics. Now, I know it seems strange to put a team in the top 5 who's currently down 0-2 in their second round series, But again, this ranking is looking at everything in totality, right? Boston looked great in round one. They beat Orlando in 5 games. And even though they're down 0-2 in this second round series, they were up 20 in both games. So they have shown highlights that they are capable of dominating the Knicks. Have they finished it off yet? Have they gotten it done yet? No, they haven't. But it's also part of the reason why there's a lot of Knicks fans who are still scared of Boston coming back. They have a huge game tomorrow in the Garden, and Knicks fans are saying that it's a must-win for the Knicks, which sounds crazy on paper, but psychologically it makes sense. The Boston Celtics are shooting 25% from 3, and they put up the most threes of any team during the season. So the likelihood that that continues is kind of slim. So the idea is, well, if they catch fire, then maybe these blowouts stay as blowouts or balloon to even bigger blowouts, and then the Knicks can't play with them. So even though they're down 0-2, I think they still have a fighting chance. They showed recently, a couple years ago, when they were down 0-3, they came back against Miami and brought that series to Game 7. Even though they lost Game 7, it still shows that this team is scary enough to where even them being down 0-2 and those first 2 games being at home, that nobody's counting them out, and I don't think that we should either. So they will round out the top 5. But that wraps it up for this week's episode. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Please make sure you like and subscribe and share wherever possible. And I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Peace.